David, it must have changed a bit around here since you last played.
Certainly has. Tremendous stadium. When it's finished, it'll be probably one of the best in the competition. So that's something I've noticed straight away.
What are your foremost memories of this place from your stint here as a player?
Atmosphere, fans, the club itself. Even coming back here today, just seeing the same faces. So that's a very it's very strong for the club to see the same people still involved. You know, and obviously on the left there with Kevin. When first approached there and asked was I interested, having Kev here, obviously Rob Oates, Gary Hetherington, you know, those sort of people there that have been involved in the club for a long time. That's the memories I have, and to see them again today, it excites me what Leeds is about.
How tough a decision was that for you to take this chance over here rather than say wait for something to come up down under?
As a player, I was fortunate enough to play over here, you know, for 4 years, and I've always said as a player, it's a privilege to play here, and for me as a coach, in particular at you know, at Leeds and the people I've mentioned, I wouldn't say it was a hard decision. It was just about moving the family again. That's probably one, but just the club itself and where the club's and the direction the club is going. As I mentioned before, there the stadium, a fantastic stadium. As a player, I just remembered, finishing off with the grand final. So it's been a club since then, 2004. It's been a very successful club for a long time. So, as I said, the decision wasn't a hard one, having those sort of people involved.
There was a lot of 11th hour speculation, Dave, about whether you may end up staying in Australia. Was there any legs in that? Was there anything in it as far as you were concerned?
No, not from my end. I made my decision, and whether at the time what South were doing with their head coach, that wasn't my decision. Was just purely on, as I said before, the club that I was, had given the opportunity there to coach, and what it meant for me as a player. So the speculation was no speculation for me. I rang Kev and I rang Gary straight away, and I said, look, I'm not sure where this come from, but I can guarantee you that I'm booked. Just got to pick my passport up and the visa, and I'm on my way.
Kevin, just what made you go for David? Just give us a bit of an insight into your thinking here.
I think when we decided we were going to go with the new head coach, wrote a list of ideals we would like the coach to have, and we wanted to get the best person for the job, and I felt we got that. When we looked down that list of ideals and the list of areas we wanted our head coach to be strong, Dave ticks every box. One of them being he fully understands the club, he understands the game over here. We obviously have a friendship, having played alongside each other, but you don't give someone a job because you're mates. I did my due diligence over in Australia. I found out about Dave as a coach. I looked at a lot of his strengths, and he's a perfect fit. He's the best man for the job at this moment in time, and hopefully it'll be a successful period for all of us. It needs to work. We all want it to work. We all want a fantastic team back out on the field. We're going through a little bit of a rebuild at the minute, and it might take some time, but we got the man we wanted.
Was he the only person you spoke to?
We had a short list of 3. We got the right man.
How closely have you been able to follow the game over here, and particularly Leeds Rhinos in recent years?
Ever since I left the shores and retired here, I've always kept an eye on the Super League. I've always enjoyed it, watching it. as I mentioned before, the fans and what it creates. The way the game's going at the moment, I think looking at England there in the final in the World Cup, and then obviously their 2-0 series at the moment, it's strong. So I've always kept an eye on it, and in particular the clubs obviously I was involved in, and Leeds Rhinos being one of them.
Were you surprised by the position you saw them in though, David, last year?
I only got to look at the year before. They obviously won the competition. Last time I was here was with the North Queensland Cowboys there in 2016. So I've kept a real close eye on it. I know they've had sort of some injury problems there with different players, but certainly I've watched it and watched them very closely. This year, towards the back end of this year as well. Obviously fighting for survival.
And Kevin mentioned there is a rebuild job on. Is that exciting for you as a coach?
It is, very much so. I think getting an opportunity, it's been 5 years since I've been head coach, getting an opportunity, as I mentioned before, a club like Leeds, how successful they have been, but also have a look at their academy side in the grand final, just against Wigan. They've always had those juniors, so I've been involved in a club there before in the NRL where I used a lot of, I blooded a lot of juniors through. I'm not scared to. If it's a part of the rebuild or best for the club, I'll make that decision. But certainly with the younger crop coming through, as I mentioned before, only just getting beaten by Wigan, we've got some really good depth, plus some really good senior players, and obviously a couple of new signings there with Tui Lola here and Conrad Hull. That's exciting. Probably me as a coach too is just getting to know and building relationships with the current players at the moment too. That excites me.
You've made some big signings there that you've mentioned. Are you expecting many more to come in before the start of the season?
I've been in close contact with Kev and Gary, just talking about obviously availability, whether it's obviously a quota spot. I've been guided there, which has been really good there off Kev. Jimmy Lowe, Chev, their thoughts on the current squad. So definitely been sort of doing my homework. Have we got another spot? I think we have got another spot, and we're obviously looking at I think bringing in world-class players if we can. That's our aim. Probably too to help those younger kids come through, and they've got to be. That's a philosophy of mine. They've got to be good people, on and off the field, not only just good players. So that's sort of what we look at.
David, you've got the scope to have 2 marquee players whose salaries above a certain level don't count on the salary cap. I think this club in the past has been fairly reluctant to use that possibility, but with you coming in, would you expect to be able to recruit players who, to have 2 marquee players whose salaries might, as I say, not entirely be on the salary cap?
Yes, we've got 1 marquee sorted already this year.
Yeah.
We hope to announce a second one
Soon.
hopefully. Sorry.
Probably no. I was just going to say it's more that I understand the marquee.
I don't think you have that in Australia, do you?
No.
Understand it properly.
No, I do understand it, but the thing is it's probably as I mentioned before, it's more about the player. If it means that it comes under a marquee player. For me, it's about getting that right player in that right position, which suits this squad.
You've been linked with Trent Berry. Is he the type of player that you'd like to bring here?
There's interest, and I think it's interest on both sides. But certainly, there's no contract being signed. But there's obviously been talks.
Is Super League ready for a guy like Conrad?
I think Leeds are. I think I was fortunate enough to have 2 seasons there with the international Tongan side, and both Tui and Conrad were in that team and in that side, and I just feel that he's a player there which would get excited in the atmosphere that's created, in particular now with the new stadium and having the South Standers, the South Siders there just sort of, cheering him on. He'll get better. And I've talked to him about it because I know I've experienced it before coming to Super League. My biggest point to players that are coming from, that are overseas quotas or overseas players is make sure you come and play your footy first. Come and play your best footy. And if you do that, you're going to enjoy, the atmosphere, you're going to enjoy the club, and you're going to enjoy your time in the game, obviously your time in Super League.
Sam Tompkins said the other day that he gets a bit frustrated sometimes as players do come over and don't fulfil their best or their potential,
No doubt, no doubt.
How do you,
And there is pressure on them, and that's, and I've been there as a player myself. But it was more about the excitement. It was more about going out and playing in front of, as I said before, the atmosphere is a bit different. I sort of miss that. When obviously back in Australia, we missed the energy that you go to even the away games there. There's just the energy there, whether it's the singing or just the passion. So, yeah.
Would you say that they're both the type of player that would really suit the style of Super League? And there's a bit of an adventurous sort of open style to Super League that some players fit a little bit more. Do you think both of those fit in with that mentality?
Yeah, we've talked about it. As I said, Gary, Kevin, and myself, we've talked about that. They're both international players too, and Conrad is a player there that can, and Tui as well. The experience for him, I think there's a lot more in both those players there. I think they can become better players playing here. I think their experience of being involved in the Super League comp. It's exciting, very exciting.
I assume you were involved in their recruitment, David, presumably you gave the nod to both those two decisions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And that again, as I mentioned before, talking to Kevin, talking to Gary, I've watched those two players in particular in a camp situation, World Cup. I think we had 4 or 5 weeks with the group there and just had a look. And as I mentioned before, they're good people, and they're players that will come and play their best footy, but also embrace the Super League and the atmosphere and the fans.
David, it feels like a long-term rebuild plan here, but what would constitute a success next year, given what happened this season?
Oh, I think I mentioned earlier before. I've got to get to know the rest of the squad as well. Yeah, there will be some little changes the way we may play in certain areas there, but look, for me, I'm not going to put any pressure on the squad, but we can talk about a rebuild. We've got some good young kids coming through. I'm excited about, as I said, Tui Lolohira coming and Conrad, and for me to get to know the remainder of the squad. There's excitement in the young academy team as well. So that's my thoughts.
Did it take much persuasion to get the likes of Tui and Conrad to sign here? Perhaps because of the way Super League is perceived in the NRL Australia?
Conrad, yeah, look, Conrad was, he could have played in both competitions really. So I think it was that. I remember talking, and this is before we even, I was actually linked to the job as well. Just talking about what he experienced in the Tongan camp and the crowds. I think he likened that sort of experience there in the international scene. Hamilton, it was over in New Zealand, and then obviously the game against England. I think those, for Conrad, it sort of excited him. And you only got, and I mentioned it before, you only got to have a look at the atmosphere that is created by the Super League teams and the fans. It wasn't hard to convince someone like Conrad and Tui as well to be involved in those sorts of games or those sorts of teams.
Kevin, you've mentioned DNA a lot since you returned here. You've obviously got Rob and Chev on the coaching staff as well. Is this an attempt to recreate the spirit of 2004?
No, not at all. I think 2004 was an important year for us all. But if we think that the spirit of 2004 would be enough today, we're probably kidding ourselves. We need to evolve, we need to be better. that environment was great back then. We need to create an environment that's great now in 2019 and beyond. So it is comforting having some blokes who you trust alongside you, who you know will give absolutely everything for the club. Hence why Dave is here. But I feel with the staff we now have in place, everybody is 100% committed to giving their all and not stopping until this club's back where it needs to be. And even then, it doesn't stop anyway, does it? Because you keep going and you keep wanting more. So I'm really looking forward to the next couple of years. Dave will have the support of all of us, and let's see what happens.
Kevin, how much pressure do you feel under here, given the massive investment that's been made in the stadium? Obviously, the people behind the club want a return on that investment, which comes in the form of bums on seats, basically, and that means they're obviously hoping you're going to deliver a trophy-winning side or something pretty near to that. I mean, that must put you under a significant amount of pressure. You don't really want another season like last season, when you've got this fantastic new place to play in front of, I would have thought.
Well, I don't feel any pressure, I'm honest, Martin. The board have been fantastic. Gary's been superb. The support I've had since I came about 3 or 4 months ago has been immense. So I think people are well aware of where we're at, and that it may take a little bit of time, but I think the place will afford us that to ensure we get it right. There does need to be some patience, but I believe in everything that we've done so far, certainly this last 6 weeks. I 100% believe in Dave. I 100% right behind him and right with him and the staff we've got, and I believe in our playing squad as well. I know they've had a rough time this last 12 months, but there's some real talent in that squad, and we've added some quality in there. I understand you may be looking at it, Martin, and thinking, we've got to do something next year, but I don't feel that at all. We need to be better. I understand we're in a great stadium as well, and of course we want to fill it. Of course we want to play some fantastic rugby, but we've got to work hard first. We've got to go get those little bits right and put everything in place so that we're able to do that.
But there's still some players who are going to move out. I mean, obviously, there's a changeover in players to a certain degree. You still expect to see some heading off?
Possibly. We start back in pre-season training on Monday. Gives Dave a chance to have a real look at everybody and an understanding of where we're at and fully what we need. He understands and has my opinions and thoughts alongside Jimmy, Rob, Chev. But we may have missed something. We may have got something wrong, and that's why Dave's here, to help get us back on track and fix some bits up and get the best out of that playing squad we've got, because as Dave rightly says, in 2017 we were Super League champions, so there's a bit there still.
Are they all back in on Monday, or some coming back?
Well, there's some that will come back in the week after, and then those 4 boys who played with England Knights will join the following week, and Richie Myler will be back at the end of November. I think
the overseas guys, when will they be here?
Some before the end of November, if there are any more, possibly early December, depending on timescales.
Kevin, do you think it's a big year for Super League in general, and what would a strong Leeds add to the competition?
Yeah, I think it's a big year, but I have to say I think every year is a big year for our sport. Given the competition out there from other sports, I have to say, with my other hat on, my England hat, what the guys have achieved over this last 3 or 4 weeks has been immense, and there's nothing quite like International Rugby League to really put us on the map and inspire that next generation who are sat at home wondering what sport they want to play. Well, hopefully we've given them something to think about now, and if we can finish the year in the right way internationally, I think Super League will start with a real bang next year again.
Dave, the Burgess brothers have said that Leeds fans should be excited about the style of rugby you're going to play. What would be your message to them?
Well, obviously the twins, and obviously Semi was involved in South, and I think the way we attacked was exciting. I think I was in charge of the attack there last season with South, and we ended up sort of finishing first in most points. But I think you've also got to look at what sort of squad you've got and the players. I mean, the twins have been playing some very good football. It was allowed us to get on the front foot. Then you need, obviously, off the back of that, what sort of players are going to play off the back of that sort of go forward and quick play the ball. So, but I do see, as Kev mentioned before, that I've watched a lot of the Rhinos games from this year. Obviously, having a look at different players, and certainly there's going to be a little bit of similarity on what what was done with another team, and it's just what we've got in the players. What sort of strike you got, how you're going to attack. I think the other thing is obviously what I noticed there in the semi-finals there in Super League, and in particular the £1 million game, there wasn't many points scored. So I'm thinking there's a little bit of a change there with the way that way teams are defending as well. So we've got to have a really good balance. The Leeds, the team itself, and how they're going to play. They've got to have a really good balance. It's great to score a lot of points, but you also you don't want to be conceding a lot of points as well.
David, you're aware obviously that the playoff next year we're going to revert to the top 5
Yes.
system, which was operated for so long in Australia. And I personally think is the best playoff system. But I just wonder what your thoughts are on that.
But also the relegation is only the bottom team.
The bottom team,
yes,
yeah.
yes, which is I think it's I like that. I think you've got to get some reward there of round games there you play through a season, because it's hard. You've obviously got bounce to the ball, you've got referees' decisions, you've got injuries there throughout the season there. And if you get through that and you're in the top 5, that's a bit of a reward for a start. So I do like that system.
Are you confident more than not in the track here, or is that pretty realistic?
As I said, both parties are interested. It's whether or not that we can. That's probably where we're at the moment. He's still with Penrith at the moment, so there's no contracts. But as I mentioned before, there's interest on both parties, or both sides.
Happy to wait as long as, or you've got a bit of a cut-off?
Look, if we've got that one spot there, and that's again straight after the press conference there. As I said before, both Gary, Kevin, and myself there will sit down there and just have a talk about the situation we're in at the moment, and if we've got that one spot, who's available. Do we use that spot? We'll wait and see.
Leeds have become famous the last few years for not spending a lot of money and generating your own players with great success, but you sense that might be changing now with the big signings that you've already made and possibly 1 or 2 more?
No, I don't. The fact that I'd like us to have 2 marquees next year doesn't change our philosophy of this squad or this team. I think this club has built its first team on young players who've come through the system, and then sprinkled in some fantastic overseas players at different times. We're just replicating that. Dave's talked about our academy. There's also a number of lads who've been away with England Knights. There's some real talent in our younger players, and they need to be given a chance. But we need to sprinkle some real quality in there as well to bring them on, like has been done previously, the likes of Dave, Danny Badeiras, we signed Jamie Peacock, Gareth Ellis. Those type of signings have always been there. It's just, now's the right time to sprinkle some quality in there.
How big an influence was Dave for you then when you started out?
Yeah, it was used. I was a young lad, and Dave came across from Wigan. Senior pro, been there, done it. He set his place off on the right foot. He came with an attitude and a professionalism that we needed. We had a lot of young players who were desperate to win and were desperate for some direction, and we had a pretty decent 2003 together, but we kicked on again in 04 and there were 2 really, really good years. And if you remember back to sort of that side, there was Dave, there was the likes of Gary Connolly who came for a short spell, Barry Mack was in here, Fanny Cummins. We had some really, really good senior players, and Dave had a massive influence on that group, and I'm sure he will now with this new group.
Can I just ask you, Kevin, is Jamie Jones going to be playing next year?
Yes.
He is, right.
In watching the performances from last season, is there anyone particularly that you're excited about working with this year who really stood out for you?
There's a few. Just I think personally you've got to get to know them. You know, that's why it was exciting to do that and get that sort of relationship early. Find out it. Certainly having a look at some of the players. Young Walker, I think, is exciting. And when we're talking about different positions, I know he's young. I like the way that he plays. So there's certainly some players there that we've sort of marked. But I think that going forward, and as Kev mentioned, having some senior players around the younger players coming through helps a lot. And it'll help someone like Walker there to become a better player. A lot better player, and he's exciting, very exciting.